I do the roll call? What? Oh, I thought I just did. Okay, we're opening the meeting.
This is the committee to assess and recommend strategies for housing creation within the town. I'll do a roll call. Committee members, Councillor Paula Schnapp. Here. Councillor Betty Lutke.
Here.
Councillor Charles Bloom.
Here.
Councillor John Crow.
Here.
Councillor Gordon Starr.
Here.
Mary Ann Barboza. Here. Hilda Hay. Rick Presbury.
Here.
Laura Schufelt.
Here.
You have quorum.
First of all, I want to open the meeting for public comment, and actually my intention is to leave public comment possibility open for the entire meeting so that if later on you have something you want to offer that will be helpful to us, please raise your hand and I will try to call on you. So anyone here that wants to make a public comment? Nobody?
Nobody.
Oh, well, I was hoping.
Scared away already.
Review of our goals and timetable. I wanted to bring up a couple of things. One was that I think this committee, this is not very important stuff, but I think this committee was supposed to finish by the end of September or something. And so I got a letter from the town attorney's office saying we had to officially extend this. Well, I had done it with the chairman of the town councilors, but so I wrote them a letter and extended it just arbitrarily until the end of January. And then I talked to the other committee, the zoning committee, and they extended theirs till the end of February. But so we do have, we do want to, as has been suggested by Paula, to try to get this done before the end of time, and sooner than that, and as soon as we possibly can. So that's one thing that's happened. Our goals, it seems, are to come up with 3 ideas to present to the town council about things that we think would be good ideas about things to do in order to improve the situation with housing. And if you, it's something that I worry about all the time, because if you consider the start of this to be 1969 when 40B was passed, we've fallen behind in all of those years. And my understanding is that when 40B passed, towns could take 2 views of it. One view was that the state is trying to take over our zoning, or second, the state's giving us an opportunity to provide more affordable housing because it gives us flexibility and use of our own zoning. And so cities in Massachusetts, in many cases, made the latter decision and got busy, and towns, Barnstable being one of them, said, no, we're not going to really do what the state wants us to do. We're going to control our own zoning. So we find ourselves all those decades later having fallen behind, even though we would have known that we had this problem and it was growing. We wouldn't have known it was going to grow as fast as it did. And so we're stuck in this situation where we're sort of hopelessly behind. And so these committees, for better or worse, have been established to try to give this some more thought. Not that the town itself in these days doesn't give it a lot of thought, because I think they do. Although we don't have a housing specialist in the town of Barnstable, many towns do. Personally, I think we should, a full-time housing person, but we don't. And that may be one of our issues, and it may not. So I just wanted to make that comment. The fourth thing on our, any further comments on that, all of that? Nobody? I'm surprised. Nobody's talking yet. We a couple of weeks, whenever the meeting was, we looked at Jake Dewey's submission that was Provincetown's residential tax exemption they've had for about 20 years, and it seems to work in Provincetown. And I don't know whether I hope everybody here has read that and maybe read it long enough ago so they don't remember what it said, but whether we think that is a valid idea for us to consider too. Thoughts?
Well, next meeting, I would like to present something I was working on with some community members, and we think it's a good idea, but I want to explain it fully. So if I, Is it on? Better?
It is now.
Okay. And so I would set something up, if that's okay, at next meeting, so we can present the full of what we're thinking. Okay? Now,
Mystery.
I also, off of this subject a little bit, I want to correct something. You know, last meeting, I couldn't be here, and I couldn't even watch it I had my grandbaby. But I watched it later on that evening, and I want to correct some facts, okay? Number one, several people texted me to ask me if I was coming to the meeting. And I made it clear, no, not this time. I have my grandbabies. And it was a nice thing. But then I didn't ask nobody. I heard one of the gentlemen with public comment said we were chatting. No, we didn't chat. Nor did I ask anybody to speak for me. Nobody speaks for me but my 3 sons, and that's got to be an emergency. Nor did I ask anybody to challenge this committee. I like to make things clear. You know, I just, not trying to be mean to him, and I talk to many community members, and I do ask to meet with them, like the airport gentleman. Whatever he was saying, it sounded nice, but I didn't understand it. I would like to hopefully see him again to learn more about what he's talking about. So you will often see me try to meet with different members to learn things. But, and maybe the gentleman meant it, I wish I could remember his name, but I don't. And and maybe he meant it in a nice way, because he was one of the ones that texted me. And I said to him the same thing. I'm not coming to the meeting. I said, but if you go, let me know what happens. There are 2 people on the committee that if I can't make it here, one would be Rick as the chair, and the other will be Cindy. Those are the only 2 people that I will check in to say, I'm not going. Now, I may tell someone else, you know, but no, I don't ask anybody to speak for me. I didn't need no one to speak for me, nor did I ask him to challenge anybody. So I just want to make that clear. You know, I like to be clear with what I'm doing. And I don't like to, if no one doesn't understand what I'm about, please ask me. And if you think I've made a mistake, please tell me that too. I can handle it. But do not put words in my mouth. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else about the Provincetown plan?
I'll say so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's some merit to that plan. From what I understand, it's landlords offering full-time affordable renters to local folks and getting the residential exemption as if you were a homeowner. I think if you do smaller situations, I think there's some merit to it. I'd like to see, I think as we're getting closer to the end on this, and we're coming up with ideas, I'd like to understand who runs the numbers. Because as I understand on our own residential exemption, the second homeowners, you know, make up the difference. The numbers are always the same. It's just the ratio of who's paying what. So I'd like to see some numbers on that. You know, I don't know if that's Mark Milne's staff or it's the assessor's staff or who might do that, but we cannot make a decision without seeing the numbers. So I'd like to see those numbers run so we can have an intelligent conversation about this, because I think it does have merits. I'd like to see what the numbers are. I think he said something, or, you know, what he offered and what we may propose. I think landlords who have 4 or less units, maybe, so 4 or fewer, sorry. But let's look at the numbers. Let's look at what's here in Barnstable and get some ideas so we can have an intelligent discussion.
Charlie, go ahead.
I agree with Betty. But I want to recall what Jake said. He said it's a tool, it's not the answer, and it's not. You know, when you're talking about residential exemption kind of money, that's not a heck of a lot, but every penny helps to convince people to do something like that. So we really need to see the numbers.
So let me
Laura, what is the number that makes people switch from from short-term rentals to year-round rentals? Is there a certain place where people say, out of the goodness of my heart, I'll switch if this tips me over, or?
It's usually community-minded people who may already be doing it, or maybe renting them at a slightly higher and would have to reduce it, but not so much that, like that make the reduction in taxes makes up the difference.
Okay.
It's kind of just a reward for doing it. It would be hard to get hard numbers right now because as to how many folks are renting year-round that would want to do it. If we looked at everybody in a 1 to 4, no more than four unit place, you could figure out the worst case, but or the highest amount.
The best case.
Best case, the highest amount. But even in Provincetown, it was mostly folks who were already renting year-round, and it was just making that switch to lower the rents.
So what would you say, like 1% of them, or that switched, or even not even that?
I
yeah,
don't know.
when you-
I don't
yeah.
have, it was a long time ago.
Okay.
I don't have the numbers. And it does take special legislation. So,
Is the special legislation in the new housing bill at all? Is that,
no,
no, okay.
no.
So can't wait for that.
So special legislation is the change of their tax obligation if they rent year-round has to be legislated.
Has to be legislated, or it did for Provincetown.
Yeah, the other thought that I had about it is partly to answer your question is Provincetown has a reputation for having a fair number of people who own property that have a lot of money. And so they might just as soon, in some cases, rent year-round because it's easier for them. And they sacrifice a little bit of money to do it, and then they have a little benefit tax-wise, and they say, that's good. I like that. Just sort of takes it off their back a little bit. And so I don't know how effective it would be here, whether you get many people choosing to do that in the town of Barnstable, which is a different type of a place than Provincetown. But it's interesting nevertheless, and maybe something that someone should really look at, maybe they already have, and to consider it.
Unfortunately, I always got to bring the negative in here. I agree with what you're saying, but the difference, as far as I'm concerned, with Providence and here, is ours is going to be a fight because we have told the people here, the builders, and I hate to think I'm always attacking the builders, but the landlords and the people who are wealthy, they're going to do everything they can to get rid of people. There's no way in the world they're going to want to lower anything. A lot of what we do is going to have to be a forced issue. It is just like in certain neighborhoods. That neighborhood's not going to want this. I have a different personality. Mine is like, I don't care what they want. And that's what we're going to have to do. If everything we do in this committee is tiptoe around the rich person who lives on that street when there's also a place to build 10 houses or have 10 people there, then, oh, well, you move. That's the problem here on the Cape. So a lot of good ideas, but I think everyone, even in their own mind, is saying, well, will Tom Jones accept that? I don't care what Tom Jones accepts. That is our biggest problem here on the Cape. And if we don't start putting a cap on rents or anything else, and that's why I can't wait for next week, because there's actually some people that want to come in with me when I present the idea that we had. And I spent 2 weekends hanging out with the homeless population. Many people which I know. We discussed many things, some of which I knew already, having experienced it myself. But I wanted to get an update on what people felt. And I know exactly what they were saying when they were saying it. So, I'm
So
sorry.
you're talking about rent control?
Rent control, but it's not just rent control. That is our problem. Everything here on this Cape dealing with housing has to do with somebody in Marston's Mills, somebody in Hyannis, somebody on Stevens Street. Give me a street. It depends on, well, I'm rich and I've been here and I don't want these people here. You know, well, let's be real. No matter what money comes out there, what you have, what kind of program you're going to put in, you're running against opposition of people who don't want low-income people around. And that is something we have to face while on this committee, while we're coming up with ideas. You also have to take into consideration what you're going to run up against. And before you even start coming up with a plan, coming up with a wonderful idea, you need to start thinking about how you personally are going to handle these people who don't like what you're doing.
Well, you brought up something that we were just talking about for a minute before the meeting, and that is that we both happened to go to I live in Marston's Mills, to the fourth of the meetings, and Laura did too, in Marston's Mills about the 14-acre property that they have where there used to be a school, which is probably the most significant piece of property in the town right now on the subject of developing housing that's affordable. And so the town has had 4 meetings to get the opinion of the people who presumably live in Marston's Mills, although not everybody did, about what they wanted there. And at this particular meeting, they presented 3 plans. One of the plans had nothing but recreation. That is, a little baseball field, what would be a soccer field, and a kids' recreation area, and no housing at all. And then the other 2 plans had some housing, not a huge number, but some housing, and in some ways, some of it was kind of unrealistic, I thought. And then the people there, there was a whole group of people in the back of the room standing with signs that said no housing. And I would say of the approximately 100 people that were there, a dozen of them said that they wanted, they got up and said they wanted no housing there, and there was great applause. And maybe 5 or 6 people there said they wanted housing there because we needed housing, and there was a little bit of applause. And it was scary because when it was expressed this way, they were thinking that the kind of people they couldn't have a playground there if there was housing, because you'd have these awful people in the housing that would abuse their kids and stuff. So it is, as you point out, a difficult issue for us to deal with, because not only do we have to make some decisions about things that we need to do, but we need to make decisions about things that could be acceptable to people. It could happen. And one last sentence. The town, in a sense, gives people in Marston's Mills the idea that they have some say over what goes there. But then you have the town council that has the ultimate say, and if there's any state money involved, the state has the ultimate say. So I don't know who really has the say about what's going to happen there. And if you take the housing people in here, Laura and I, for example, we could probably design something that would work out for everybody, but they wouldn't want us to do that.
See, that's my point. Do they own the land?
No, the town does.
Okay, if the town owns the land, that's my point.
No, it's a
We
good
would
point.
not be in this housing crunch if everybody didn't keep catering to, like I said, Tom Jones. I already know. I'm a 50-50 person. Half the town wants to kill me. The other town asks me if I care. You know, when it comes to being right, when people need to be out of the cold, they don't have time to worry about recreation. If you've got that much money, take your child somewhere. Okay? And I know I'm very blunt, but I'm sorry. Too many people are cold. The other thing is, when you sit and you give them the power, then they're going to take it. Now, I can see if they were saying you were building a jail on the premises. That's different because how would you secure it? There's all kind of things you have to look at. When it comes to housing, we are dealing with nothing more than prejudice. They either assume that poor people don't care or people of color don't care. And enough is enough. So it is our choice. When I say every individual, on what you're going to accept, what you're going to, oh, let me see what this one likes. I'm sorry. People are dying out in the streets. And then you wonder why people drink. You know, the first time I ever took a drink in my life was when I was homeless. And it was so cold. And someone said, here, take this. And I didn't care after I drank it. So I'm telling you, people are dying, and I can't worry about what's living next to that land, that property. If they don't like it, let them take their money, go build another house somewhere, because everyone has to follow rules. If someone who is living on the property, once something is built, it's like everything else. If they're breaking the law, have them arrested. If they're not acting, there's rules for everything. And if a person doesn't abide by them, get them out. But to say we're not going to build it, not going to do it because it's hurting someone's feelings, oh, they don't dress like I do. Too bad.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
I think that could be one of our strategies is to say the Marston Mills property needs housing. Just as a committee, we could say that, but we need to focus not on how it's going to make people feel or whatever. We need to focus on the strategies. So we need to list them somewhere and start moving through them and see what decisions have to be made.
My point of bringing it up is the inevitable responsibility that a town has in balancing what is really needed, desperately needed, versus what a lot of people want or don't want. I mean, has to be a consideration. And I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying that I sit here as a person that's done a lot of developments, and thinking when I'm in that meeting in Marston's Mills, I'm trying to think of something we could do there that would be useful to provide plenty of useful housing and do minimal disturbance of the people who live there, who are terrified of having this housing there.
I agree, but we should that's one of our strategies. I think the town council should actually say that, is that having no housing there is not an option.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Laura, what do you think?
So,
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think, I'm never been afraid of a fight. And, it needs to be stated that this is a town asset.
Yes.
And if our goal or our strategy is to explore town assets for affordable housing, including the school and other properties, I think that's, that would be something that we could do now, understanding that the school can't move forward until sewer's there.
Yeah.
But it's something that we can put forward and then move to the next one.
so is it something we should decide and vote on right now?
Yes.
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 Anonymously, yes.
And we don't need to do the numbers or the analysis, just that there
No.
will be housing.
Yes.
Do we care whether it's rental or home ownership?
It was-
Let me ask-
That's-
let me just
that's-
ask
I think
the
we
question.
should keep it broad.
Broad.
And it shouldn't respond to just this property,
property, yeah.
but that all town assets should be evaluated for use as housing. I mean, and there's several properties that are out there that there's been some initial attempts, there's been some initial designs. Some properties have moved in that direction. I believe everybody on this council voted for the disposition of the properties on 149 for the 2 Habitat homes. I think that was after your term. So we have history of doing this, and it's really putting the kind of lighting the spark. And I think to Gordon's point, other people's comments, the sooner we do that, the easier it's going to be for us to be unified, saying that some part of this property should be housing. Because otherwise, we have one concept plan out there that says recreation only, and I'm not sure I have an appetite for that concept plan. So, and I think we're going to be misleading the public if we keep holding it up there as a viable option. So, if our committee can serve a purpose and kind of get behind that, I'm all for it.
I think our committee is making a recommendation. You know, we're not making policy here.
Right.
But just this group that's
Can
been
I
pulled
just
together.
bring up one thing? You said, if we said, yeah, build 2 Habitat houses there, everybody would say, okay, great. 2 Habitat houses won't hurt us. Is that really what we mean?
No. No.
We're here to identify strategies in the broadest sense. That's where I would lead it. Choomp.
Well, I think if I were wording a motion, and I'm not going to do it, I would try to put something in there that implies more than just 2 Habitat houses.
No, on the drawings that they have out there, there's 3 concepts. There's one that is just the play field, and there's 2 other options with houses, different type of housing. So we'll be fine with if we just get behind them and say, listen, let's get houses out here. We can't have kids running around if they don't have anywhere to lay their heads. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Yes.
I was also at that meeting with you in Marston's Mills, and what I noticed is it was about probably 50-50, 60-40, for and against. And as far as for housing, it was a different mix of what people liked. And what I thought was interesting is that the people who were opposing that they weren't rich people. They were people, to me, they all look like contractors. And so I think it's different from every village. Just wanted to mention that. I would like to see the point of the spear here being the counselors that are from Marston's Mills to talk to their people and come to some kind of conclusion what they would like to do there. And I think it should be led by those counselors and brought forward through the rest of the council in that direction. Because it's a tough job to do. There are people who say no for everything. And I believe there should be some housing on that, no question about it. It's a question of how much, and I think some of those plans that we saw were fairly reasonable plans.
Yeah, they were like,
Okay, that were of the 2 of the 3 plans. So there is a group there that is young, and it's not the usual suspects and their attitudes towards housing. But I'm not sure how we will proceed here, whether we want to say there definitely be housing there. I would like to hear the arguments, but I think it should be from the councilors in that put forward, and they should meet their people and talk about that and get to some kind of consensus of the community. And I don't think that consensus is totally against, to tell you the truth, from this point. I see about half and half.
but I think the councillors have been working on that, and they're asking for input at this point in time. I think over the last 10 years, there have been so many conversations that I don't think anybody's lacking the conversation. I think that is just making that decision that we're going to do some housing here. The 2 plans that I saw out there, I think they each have like 18 houses, I think. 18 to 20, which was not a lot. And there was still space for the greenery, the play field, and everything else. So I think if we come together as a committee and said, listen, this is our recommendation for housing. We can't have ball fields and everything else. Where are those children going to live if they have anywhere to go sleep at night? Or are they going to have energy to go out there and play when they are worried about where they're going to lay their hair or where they're going to eat?
And that's,
The one problem I had is one of the plans had ADUs on it. It had housing with ADUs, and I don't think it's realistic to think a first-time home buyer is going to be putting in an ADU unit in there at the same time they buy the house. I don't think that's a realistic belief.
well,
I'm not sure how they want to go about it, but saying it and we all get behind it and say housing, and then they work out the best way that will fit the community and fit.
Because my thought was, even if we get housing there, which has to be, I think we all agree, okay? And it doesn't all have to be for home owners, because people may be able to even buy the home, but can they sustain it? There's all kind of things, something break, you're not calling a landlord. You got to call and get it done. But the other thing I want to correct, and I apologize if I give people the impression I don't like rich people, I don't like this. Many of my family members, district attorneys, judges, they have money. So it's not that. That's our problem here on the Cape, though. And when it comes to the builders, of course they're going to fill a room, because building businesses, they're going to get a lot more money by putting gigantic businesses and different things up. So building a home, they're not, my belief, my understanding is they're not going to get as much for building homes. So no. And I really don't care if it was 1,000 people. People have a right to live. And if you can't always take the majority, this is going to sound drastic, but let's be real with it. The majority back in our time thought it was okay to have slaves and hang people. Was it right? No. So obviously, we don't always go with the majority. We have to do what we know in our hearts. People who are low income and people who want to be first homeowners, they need a place to go. Let's make it town land. I vote yes.
Laura?
I'll go back to a little bit repeat a little bit of what I've already said. I think we're supposed to come up with strategies, not specific projects. That's for a group that should be made up of folks from all of the villages, because it's a town asset, not a Marston's Mills asset, and I know I'll take. And so I think that our job is to say the strategy for using town-owned land is one of the strategies that we support and think the council needs to implement.
Want to make that a motion?
I move that. So-
Second. I second.
Could you repeat the motion?
Let's see, now I have to think about it again. This committee recommends the strategy of using town-owned assets to develop affordable housing and I'll just leave it at that, because I think it's up to the council to decide what and who the projects would be.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Yes.
I have a question. What does affordable housing mean?
Affordable housing is, the traditional definition is housing for households at 80% area median income or less. That doesn't restrict it to only affordable housing, but that it includes affordable housing.
And does that also, under that umbrella, mean rental or homeowner?
Yes.
Okay.
Does that allow for other uses, obviously, for the town? Not simply for affordable, but other uses that town sees fit?
Yes.
I would assume so.
Well, we weren't talking about a specific project.
No, we're not talking about a specific
No,
project.
we're talking about using an asset, and that asset could be subdivided and have a playground and housing as well.
So can I, I'm a little uncomfortable voting on something at the moment, because we don't have a list of options. So my first option would be a transfer tax. So what's involved with that? And I think everybody else might have another option.
Well, this would be one of three.
Right. But I don't even want to pick one yet, till I've seen 6 of them. Does that make sense?
Well, we have a motion and a second, so
She can withdraw her motion
Maybe-
anytime she wants.
what?
She can withdraw her motion anytime she wants.
Yeah, and I'm
sort of
just saying we have a
But,
motion and a second, so.
I don't know if anybody agrees with me. I don't know if that's,
I just
I
wanted
tend
to
to-
understand it.
I'm having trouble because I taught 3rd and 4th grade for 35 years. I need like a chalkboard where I can see what the options are. I need somebody typing it up on the screen or something so that everybody can make one or two recommendations. We can put like 7 of them up there and we'll talk about how useful they are. That's how I would do it.
What would, you were going?
No, I just wanted to say we also might want to be more considerate of the language that we put into our motions so that it maybe is a little bit more directive. We've had policies out there in town to consider it a town asset for housing. I think what has to come out of this committee has to have a little bit more force and more sense of prioritization, that there needs to be some sense of momentum that this is what we want to do. Obviously, it would assist us in supporting housing being where the Marston's Mill School is, but I think there's a lot of other town assets, and we need to be thinking how that's going to work. I tend to agree with Gordon as well that I would rather consider an entire slate of options, and that this one might be one that we kind of park and maybe ask a subcommittee to come back with a more refined motion, strategy for our next meeting, and then identify two to 5 other ones that we want to consider. So,
And I guess when you say options, what do you, other than housing? Or
No,
the
but
type of housing?
So Gordon was suggesting a transfer tax, that the council should support a transfer tax, which would possibly generate revenue that could be devoted to housing. So that could be a strategy that comes out of this committee.
Okay.
It could be something some councilors decide to move forward without it coming out of this committee, but it always is helpful if there's another body that is, moving that direction. We could do a strategy that incorporates some aspect of looking at our local tax options to incentivize year-round housing. The application of the residential tax exemption to housing stock that is between 1 and 4 family might be something we want to propose, or we might want it to be a little broader. That would be an example, but there could be other possible ways that we could do it.
I just misunderstood. I thought when he was saying it that you were saying housing plus something else. I'm not. Do you understand what I'm saying now? Because my biggest fear would be that that's part of the problem. We talk for 1,000 years on housing, but it never happens. But I'm good to go. We're good to go, as long as we know how that area is for housing.
We're no longer talking about Marston Mills.
Oh, any place. I got you.
So-
I'm good to go. Sorry, I just misunderstood.
Yeah.
Yeah, first thing, I agree with both Paula and Gordon. I think we need a suite of things that we're going to vote on versus each separate item at this point. About the recommendations to the council as we go forward. One thing, for example, the Marston's Mill School is not even on this agenda tonight.
I don't think it should be.
Yeah, and not that I have an issue with anything we've talked about, but I'm saying that's not on it. And I would like to see that the representatives of Marston's Mills will go back to the constituents and maybe present something to this group.
So, John,
We're done.
I think that really isn't the purview of this committee, and how Marston's Mills counselors deal with their constituency regarding this issue when it's a town asset is going to be a delicate one at best.
One thing, and I'll call.
So I totally understand where you're coming from, but most of in fact, exclusively the meetings on the Marston's Mills School have been in Marston's Mills. And I think when another counselor recommended we have a public meeting not in the mills, it was to recognize that this is a town asset and we need a much larger representation to be speaking about what we're going to do there. So.
Well, I still think that's the way to go, and it is a tough job, but that's what our job is, to represent our constituents and what their views are in front of the full council. So I think that'd be the way to go, for my
Yeah,
opinion.
the
Go
reason
ahead.
I brought up Marston's Mills tonight was, it was not to make this decision, but to further understand that we have people who are for and against this kind of thing, and we have to decide whether we're going to try to do what's best for people who need housing, or what's best for a combination of people who are already living here and others who need housing, to deal with that and whether we consider that or not. That's why I brought it up. And, you know, it's a difficult thing, because we all care about the people who live here, and we care, and whether they have housing or not, you know. So anyway,
But we also represent our constituents. And
Well, that's what
constituents is the public. We all represent the public. So that's just my point. I
Yeah,
think
yeah, that was my point, too.
That's what was mentioned in that meeting at the time. The council is just going to go by itself and do what it wants to do. And in points, we do have to do what we have to do. It's a question of, though, making sure the public has their say and getting some kind of consensus from that public.
so public comment, please
Hey,
introduce
Paul
yourself.
Phelan, just a brief point of order, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for recognizing me. I love the direction that this committee is heading in. And as the council stated, we need some type of whiteboard or someplace to put our ideas on. If it's not too late in a meeting, I'd just like to suggest we have plenty of portable whiteboards, and we have members of the planning and development here that might be able to run down and get one. I don't know if at this point you'd like to go that way, but I like the idea of putting the ideas up on the board and then hash them out. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you.
So I would like to withdraw my motion.
I'll withdraw for the moment. No, because we do want to all make sure we're all on the same page. And I can respect what, please, everyone, forgive me. I am terrible with names, okay? So if I forget your name, forgive me. And I can respect what you're saying. But I guess my fear, and I'm going to tell you right up front, is that I've been involved with so many committees, and you form a committee, then you have to get the subcommittee, then you have to get the subcommittee, and you're on committees for 100 years and nothing gets done. And there are times that even with the people that you're representing, if, and this is to everybody, not just you, if everyone that you're representing is selfish, greedy, and or kind and loving, we still have to do what is right on the committee. And this committee was put together because of the housing problem. And the housing problem we have is because of too many of the thoughtless people, point blank, who did not want poor people here. And low income and poor people and rich people have been living together in Barnstable. I don't care, I'm 69. And since I was a kid, you know, and as I talk about my father's generation, so they can come together. This is we have a new breed of people that have come here and want, and this sounds very cold, so some of your people that we represent may be mixed in that. And it's hard, but all people are going to have to take a hard stance and say, look, this is the way it is. You know, because you're always going to have people like me who are going to drive the world crazy. And you can't tell someone what it's like to be hungry if you've never been hungry. You know, so thank you. Oh, one last thing. Is that the gentleman? You're the gentleman from the airport? When we leave, can we exchange numbers? I didn't understand I saw the show after, and I didn't understand all what you were saying, but it sounded interesting, and I'd just like to know more about things, okay?
Okay,
Thank
Laura?
you.
No, I was just going to, I was just looking at the next item on the
Okay.
agenda.
I brought up the next item in part because it's something that we should be aware of. But one of the big changes in the state law with ADUs is that they don't have to be owner occupied. That is, the primary house does no longer have to be owner occupied as of February, I think. And that does change that quite a bit. I thought we should be aware of it, and because it may affect some of the things that we say. So we're going to end up with duplexes now as opposed to ADUs in a sense, although one unit has to be larger than the other. But I assume a landlord, a builder can build now, as of February, can build a duplex in a town with a bigger unit and a smaller unit and rent it out to somebody year-round on both sides, period. Do you agree with that? No, I'm talking to Laura. She's the one that is up to speed on all this, so.
I mean, the second unit has to be accessory to the first, so
It's smaller.
it could be a smaller addition or a detached or over the garage or in the basement or whatever, and it has square footage limitations, so, yep.
And the other thing I think we may have talked about at the last meeting, or was it the time before, I can't remember, is that in town, pretty much anybody can rent a room in their house. If they pay $80 and have $90 and have the town come and inspect. And I'm not sure everybody knows that. Which would create some housing, everybody does know it, because, a senior citizen wants to rent a room to another senior citizen who's selling their home, they could move in and there's another, so. Okay, any other, yes?
I was wondering, Paula, can the town impose a stricter standard than the state with regard to the primary
No,
unit being, no?
no.
It's not
stuck
one of
with
those
it.
times. Huh? Okay.
It's nice to get a one-word answer, isn't it?
What?
It's nice to get a one-word answer on a question.
Yeah.
But I think we ought to, personally, ought to explore the options of what the town can do in some of these situations. Because I see these ADUs that somebody will buy a property, build an ADU, and just as an investment property again, and they will be both market level and won't be year-round housing. I mean, that's the highest, best use, and that's what will happen. So that's one of the reasons why I opposed originally having one unit not owned by, or not have one of them owned, so it wouldn't become another investment property for companies to buy up properties and turn it into that. And we're not helping ourselves with more short-term rentals out there for the summer, and there's no year-round for the people who get kicked out in April and back in September. So I think that's the problem we have with the ADUs.
So is that a question too? Is there anything we can do about that?
I'm thinking maybe we can look at possibilities for parameters in certain respects that don't inhibit the rules that has been set by the state, but make it more palatable to what we're trying to accomplish here.
So that might be another thing that we pass along to the council.
That's what I was going to follow on to John's comments, is perhaps one of our strategies is, I'm not aware that our town has a short-term rental policy. I know Nantucket has tried at least two occasions, maybe more, to pass one. I think they've had some great ideas in their packages that they've proposed. They just haven't gotten the votes. But I think it's something that was addressed in the town and set aside many years ago. And perhaps that needs to come back, and we need to regulate the short-term rentals, because there is none, as far as I'm aware. There's no regulation on those, and I think we should do that. I would see that as a strategy.
Sorry. I would have to agree with that. I think one of the bigger problems we have with the exacerbation of our problems of having year-round housing is that most of landlords have realized they can make in 2 months what they can make in a year. And this is what's happening. And so I think that we really need to have some STR regulations. They were put forward by a group a number of years ago. They were dismissed by the council at the time. Not by the council, but by a subcommittee of the zoning board. And I think if you look at all the towns, states, and international locations that have put reasonable regulations on short-term rentals, because their properties have been, towns have been hollowed out in that it's only the year-round people, the teachers, the firemen, all we talk about, can no longer afford to stay in their own towns. And those properties are much more valuable renting during a high season. So I think that's probably the most important thing we'll do here is short-term rental regulations, because that'll bring a lot of these properties that have been taken off the market back on the market.
So, Paul?
Thank you very much, Paul Phelan. Regarding that same subject, Councilor Crowe, you nailed it, because in my precinct 6, I know of 5 Airbnb homes that are taken off the rental market year-round because they can rent it on a weekend and get big bucks for it, and it's a hell house. It's an animal house for the whole neighborhood, for the police. Is showing up there constantly. The neighbors are disturbed by it, so we can be killing 2 birds with 1 stone, creating housing and preventing this ruckus going on to our neighborhoods. And I know, and for a fact, there are towns in Massachusetts that have restricted Airbnbs. So I hope that's you can piggyback on that as well. I would love for us to look in. I know we must have at least 300 Airbnbs. I don't know the exact number. Thank you. 700.
So I'm confused. John started talking about ADUs and 2 owners, I think. They can only have 1 owner, right, for both?
No owners have to live there at all.
No, but it's only 1 owner owns both pieces.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Are ADUs restricted from being short-term rentals?
Yes.
Yes. So ADUs can't be short-term rentals.
At this point, yes. That's correct.
Okay. And that's not going to change with the state? No. Okay. And then we got off into short-term rentals. Do you have a proposal for short-term rent? I mean, are we making zoning proposals here or regulation? So can you make a proposal that's real succinct and short and something we could all talk about and discuss?
I can bring something forward, not right now,
Yeah,
but I
I
think
just- if
it's a
we
very
could-
complicated issue. And I think what you need to do is go back to the old Cape Cod rental traditions, where people would move out of houses for a month and sleep on somebody's couch and rent their house and then pay off some of their property taxes. Right now, we have people that are both building houses and all other houses that are just for short-term rentals and making a fortune off them, and at the cost of having less houses available for year-round rental. And I think the way you need to do that is to first, you have to say there's only a certain amount of times you can rent, a maximum amount of times you can rent for short term. You want to get it so that the investor or the person who's buying a house who's going to 10 years from now want to live in the Cape and retire here. But in between, they're taking that house and renting it and keeping it off the market. You want to take the profit motive out of that. And you cannot pay, say for you saying able to take a mortgage for a second home, that you can't make the amount of rent to pay that mortgage with what you can get for short-term rentals. You've got to adjust the rules to make it, to disincentivize that as a way of running your property. Okay? And I think all landlords now are doing that, almost all, and that's caused us the shortage we have. Whether you have an expensive house down in Osterville on the water or versus a house that's less expensive somewhere else, it's putting people on the street for 4 months out of the year.
Yeah.
So we have to find out a formula that says you can short-term rent, but the ability for you to use that as an investment property, the returns will not match what it costs to carry the home. And I think that's the way we need to do it. So if people who own a home, they can rent a bedroom, or they move out next to their neighbors. They've done it for years, and rent those houses during the summer, and make that money for their property taxes. But we don't incentivize investors to do it.
Okay.
I was just going to say that, I don't think this committee has that short-term rentals is part of our charge, that we look at, what short-term rentals and, a housing strategy. Short-term rentals are 3 to 5% of Barnstable's households or homes, to spend that much time on something that I don't think is going to result in anything. And I don't think the most we could do is say that the council should address short-term rentals, because it's not our job to figure out what that is. And there have been lawsuits that prevent restrictions on short-term rentals. So that's my opinion.
I will say there have been lawsuits, but the Supreme Judicial Court has ruled in favor of not having short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods. They've done it twice now in Massachusetts. And a number of other towns have actually been successful and been sued by both Airbnb and other entities and won those cases. So the legal background here in Massachusetts is actually positive towards that from the
I think to be consistent with the charge of this committee, we would have to establish that regulating short-term rentals would have a positive impact on the creation of housing, especially affordable housing. And to date, I haven't seen really any data that supports that in the town of Barnstable. So I would not be currently in support of that as one of the 3 strategies that came out of this committee. Is there a place in the town that we want to reopen this discussion? I think that's something that could be brought up, but I don't think that I would feel like that would be one of the 3 strategies I would prioritize at this point.
I respond to that. We have somewhere between 700 and 800 short-term rentals. I'm not sure those are all brand-new buildings. I'm sure there are houses that were already built and now they're short-term rental. So to say we don't have any data is probably correct, but it's just, it goes without saying that we're using homes now for short-term rentals that weren't used for homes before, for year-round housing. So I would say that we should do some study on it, but I think that data will show that's the case. I also believe that should be one of our charges. I'm sure we can have it read back what the charge of this committee was, but we're solutions for affordable housing. And one of the solutions is to keep our affordable housing from going to short-term rentals so it's no longer available. Okay, so I think that is under our charge.
So I don't know if that's a lot of the short. What I see happening around me, and I've seen quite a few people, is what is happening that landlords give people notice to leave. They're not renting the property as short-term rental, but they're doubling the rent. That is the problem. Not short-term. So you may be living in this house, costing you $2,000 a month that you've been paying. You've been living there for the last 5 years. This year come around, you get notice to leave. You know how much that person rents after you leave? From $2,000 to $3,000 or $3,500. So it's not that it's short-term rental. It's that the price that it goes up by, people can't afford it. That is what most of the trouble is.
Which is a reflection of what's happening all across this country, unfortunately, that the market forces are mismatched with what people's incomes are, the housing costs. I think I'm hopeful there's going to be a little softening on that, but, since COVID, the increases have been incredible. And some of that has been that people have been able to move to places and buy up housing stock because they can work remotely. And so I think that's been a lot of experience in Barnstable and on the Cape, that a lot of housing that could have been used for year-round housing is actually year-round housing, but people who, are now working remotely.
A person cannot afford it because their paycheck cannot match up with paying that rental?
I think other reasons for that, there are other reasons. One was the moratorium on rent increases during COVID, and that has put many landlords where they want to recoup those. And so when those moratoriums end, they increased it. We talk about rent control. I think what has been happening in the history of rent control, what it does is actually create shortages. And it also creates landlords that abandon their buildings and don't maintain them because they're not getting return on their investment. So rent control usually exacerbates the situation versus helping it, and creates an artificial shortage. And so I don't think rent control is the answer either. But I just wanted to fill in some of the blanks there.
If I may, whatever. I disagree with rent control causing. Rent control is what is needed. Because there is greed. Greed is greed, if I'm understanding you correctly. You're saying when they put a cap on the rent, is that what you're saying? They need a cap on it because it's not fair. I mean, the person owns it, so it is their business, okay? But if we see when there's no control, greed steps in. And and that is the problem. If I've been paying $2,000 forever and all of a sudden I want to get greedy and tell this person, okay, your lease is up, before you can pay again, I want $4,000. That's just greed. And there's nothing stopping me from doing it, so why not? And that's...
I'll answer that. There's another explanation for it. It's called market forces. Okay, if somebody puts the rent to a level that is too expensive for somebody to rent, they won't rent it. Okay, they won't get somebody to rent it. Okay, and the market determines what rents are. Unfortunately, it's the system we live under, and it's a supply and demand issue. It's not necessarily greed. It's you rent for what you can get for it. Okay, and if you can't get that for it, then you will drop your rent to where you can get it. And unfortunately, that's the way the market works.
Okay, but I also want to disagree a little bit with you right there. Because when it comes to a certain population wanting to keep another population out, they will call up their friend Dean Martin and say, I got a nice house here, come rent it for the summer. They'll do whatever they got to do. We've seen it done time and time again. So whether it's greed or whether it's to keep that certain look to a community, they'll do that too. So it's not always that.
I don't disagree with you, but we have equal opportunity housing laws here, and that's against the law for people to do that. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm saying it's against the law. Okay, and we have laws in this country to prevent that.
And you are correct.
I'm not saying they always happen.
No,
they always work.
You are so correct. There are laws, but by the time we can prove it that it happened, you're homeless. And I was a member of Cape Coders Against Racism years ago, and two of the wonderful people have passed away, but we used to have to set up stings, and they would go in, and by the time you get it to be heard, things are over with. People are homeless. So you can have all the laws you want, but if the person that's sitting in that courtroom, we'll get to you in a year from now. What is that going to do to the person or for the person that's caught up in that law? So I'm sorry, that group of people to keep it a certain way, they'll jump in to keep it a certain way. Unfortunately, it's the way it is. When you're on the other side of that, you see it.
I also think that saying putting a cap on rent, I'm not so sure about that. Reasons why. I have seen just in this year how much has taxes gone up. Believe me, almost $2,000. Insurance has gone up drastically. And because of that, I couldn't fairly sit here and say, put a cap, because every neighborhood, according to your zip code, your taxes are going to be different. And whatever you had paid for that house, even if you had buy your house in the last, say, 3-4 years, we have paid 600,000 for that house that 10 years ago you could have paid 200,000 for it. How are you going to rent it for a certain amount below, you can't afford to lose money? Because you still have that mortgage to pay, you still have the insurance, and you still have taxes, and you still have to maintain that. As a homeowner, I see that. And I have to deal with it. And for somebody to say to me, oh, I'm going to put cap on because you're renting. A lot of times people are just trying to catch up. And a lot of people who act like they have money don't really have any like me and you. They're just playing the game. And they can't afford it like me and you.
I agree 100%. But as a homeowner I'm on the verge of losing mine, I'm fighting for mine. And all it took was to have some medical things happen, and you're caught up between a rock and a hard place. Now, the sad part is there are people that don't have to worry about the increase of things. And so just to add more money so they can go to the Caribbean islands over the summer, well, let's charge somebody something. And they're not realizing that the workplace money is not going up. The salaries aren't going up. Things in the stores are. And we can place blame all around the world. But the fact of the matter is, people who are struggling to live have to make a choice. And like I said, when your roof or whatever decides to go, you don't have a landlord to go to when something happens. You're the landlord. And, it's hard. So I think this committee, I'm hoping, I don't know anyone's income. It's not my business. It's not my business to know anyone's whatever. But I think if all of us on this committee, or any committee, who has to deal with helping other people, have got to try to find a way to pretend you're walking in their shoes, pretend you're hungry, pretend you're cold and outside. When you start doing that for a while, then just maybe you can really understand and you can come to the conclusion of this is what we have to do. But it's hard to sit in a seat and make plans when you've never, ever been on that receiving end. Just go 3 days without having a bite to eat and say, oh, I know what it's like. No, you don't know what it's like to be hungry until you really are hungry. So that's all I'm asking everyone to do. And then you would truly have some answers. You'll come up with answers. You'll understand. Go home, turn your heat off. Go sit outside. Sleep on your porch. Sleep on your step overnight. Literally, don't just say, oh, it's getting too cold. I can't go for this. I'm going in the house. Stay outside. I bet everyone will come up with some ideas. And I don't mean that to be mean or cold or nothing. I just want us to understand. Really, really understand. And then we'll be wanting to build a house for somebody, okay? That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
So it doesn't sound like we want to put a rent control on our list of things to suggest to the council. The review of the new proposal to tax homes when they're sold that are worth $1 million or more is the next item on the agenda.
Everyone's looking at me.
What?
Is it you?
I think that refers to the real estate transfer tax. The real estate transfer tax was not part of the Affordable Homes Act. It came out before. Moving on, there is talk that there may be, there is the option of special legislation to do it. The council would have to propose it, or someone would have to propose it to the council for the council to move it forward. And there's also talk that it may be brought back in the seasonal communities designation. Right now, Barnstable doesn't meet the definition of the seasonal of a seasonal community. There are, right now in the law, either 3 or 4 other ways that the town the town would have to request that the town be designated as seasonal communities. Once the commission is established and the guidelines are established for how to do that, that hasn't been done yet. But to the particulars of what that would mean, the real estate transfer tax, the community could decide that any property that's sold over a certain amount and this various floors that have been proposed by communities that are looking for a special legislation. Most of them are around $1 or $2 million. That in that amount above $2 million would be taxed, the transfer tax that would come to the municipality, and the municipality in their ordinance or bylaw would say where that money was going to be, what it was going to be used for. And all the communities so far that have been trying to implement this have indicated that it would be used, it would be given to their Affordable Housing Trust, or their, some communities down Cape have a year-round housing trust. So that's what a transfer tax is. Right now, we don't have the ability, except through special legislation, to do it.
And Laura, I don't believe any of the towns have been awarded a transfer.
No, the special legislation has not, none of them have moved forward out of committee. So no one's been able to do it so far.
But there's a sense that if there's a kind of a critical mass of communities requesting it, that the legislature might have a harder time ignoring it.
I don't know. They do have some, they do have some political support, but they also have, a big real estate lobby against it. So, right now they haven't been able to tip it in favor of the transfer tax, and that's why it didn't get in the Affordable Housing Act.
And I think the recent appreciation of real estate values has been a bit of a concern, that if you set the ceiling, or, you set it at a threshold at 1 million, that really would affect a whole bunch of houses. And so.
Right. There is one community, and I can't remember which one it is now, that in their special legislation says that the floor is twice the median sales price. So, and I can't remember which town it is, so I'm not going to guess.
So it'd be $1.5 million here or something.
I think we're at 700,000, something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Then you have all the
750.
complications of how much you owe on the house, and, and the taxes you have to pay on any gain you might have, and all that kind of stuff.
The transfer tax was not a big percentage. You also can say what percentage would be above, so what percentage the tax would be above the floor.
So nothing's going to happen in a hurry.
No, I mean, probably faster than some of the other things we're looking at.
So so there are no towns, Boston does Boston have this transfer tax?
No, they have special legislation, but it hasn't even been heard.
Okay, but other parts of the country do? It could
Yes.
be, yeah. So we would have to decide what the percentage, and what the price of the house would be, what the cutoff would be.
The
Twice
floor.
the median, $2 million. We'd have to figure out a percentage, somewhere between 0 and 2%.
I think that's about.
That's basically what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
Provincetown did 0.5%. We're not, we're talking about tools in the toolbox. We're not talking about raising millions of dollars. But
It's substantial.
okay,
It's substantial. I think Provincetown would have had like 4 million or something.
Really? Okay. So what else do we have to decide between those two things? When it starts, who pays for it?
Well, first you have to have the instrument to do it. You have to have
Send it to the Senate, right?
special legislation.
Yeah.
So you have to get the local delegation to support it, and then, it has to be taken up, to the whole House and then Senate.
But the first step here is for the recommendation to come from the town council to seek a home rule
Seek a home rule
petition.
petition,
Right,
okay.
and that would have to be drafted, and a majority, I believe, of the council to have it go forward.
I think special legislation is 2/3.
Oh.
Maybe not.
But
In town charters, it is.
Okay. Might be. Dick?
So the number 7, discussion of proposed minimum percentage of affordable units in a given development. I don't really fully understand why there's such a variation when you look at all the proposed projects, and there's just, it almost seems random that the percentages that are picked. Anybody comment on that? I mean,
I'd like some more information actually on that, because I'd like to see a larger percentage, but it all comes down to what dollars and cents of what the developer can build for and get a return on his investment. The higher the percentage, the less return he'll receive. And so I'm wondering if that'll discourage developers for a cost basis of making those units or not. I think we need to study that. And like I said, I'd like to see a higher amount, but then I think somebody has to subsidize that.
yeah, I think with all the projects I did, I don't think I did any less than 20 or 25%. So naturally, it's a question I would ask. But the other question is, if we are falling behind in terms of the number of units that we need for affordability, then we don't get there by doing 10%, let's say. And so do we want to push that button in some way and either have the town provide, commit the money that it does have to those kinds of projects, or to essentially require that developers use some state money in order to help us catch up with the housing that we need? Obviously, it's like everything else, it gets complicated when you get down to the reality of it.
Well, how did you do it?
We did all tax credit projects and things like that, so.
What kind of project?
Tax credits.
Okay.
And I don't think we ever did a project that wasn't 25%. Or usually did 100%, actually.
And since the pandemic, costs have gone up about 50%.
Yeah, well, I know that.
And so
I'm not doing it anymore.
that's making the gap bigger. I think that our inclusionary bylaw ordinance, and I know the planning department has been looking at it and has a draft of, a incomplete report. What's necessary is what's called an economic feasibility assessment or analysis. And when you do that, when an economist does that analysis, it looks at the individual municipalities' market and construction costs, et cetera, and then can figure out what the percentage of affordable should be at what area median income. And if the town is interested in tiered, if it's, so many at deeply affordable and so many at 80%, that could be part of it. But I think that economic feasibility assessment is what's necessary to finish that report and then give guidance to the council or to us to recommend, how that ordinance needs to be reconfigured. Right now, it's a general ordinance. My preference would be to make it a zoning ordinance. As a zoning ordinance, it can be enforced by the building commissioner. Right now, it's not enforced. And so that's what, if I was queen, that's what I would wave my wand and make happen, because we do need to have it consistent, and we also, and predictable, and we also need to know with data what the maximum we can impose. We, the town,
I agree.
the royal we.
Yeah.
This is a ignorant question. Now, I need to, when it comes to developers and builders, I don't know much about all of this. So what I don't know, I will ask. Do they still have bids on who does what in a town? As far as the bidding, I remember, they used to, when my brother's family used to do all that, they just didn't automatically get the job. They had to bid, and they took statewide bids to get the jobs as far as the building and all that kind of stuff. Is that still done nowadays in the town?
It's done for public construction projects, so these are private development.
Well, wouldn't that, I guess my question, if the town is building the homes,
No.
no, but I'm talking about in Marston's Mills, no? If the
No.
town that's right.
Well, if you look at
town-
most projects
they
are
won't-
private developers on private land. And
Right.
so it's a different deal altogether. The town
Yeah.
gets to negotiate some things on it when they're approving the plans.
Oh, right, okay.
But the
Yeah.
projects that are
Yeah.
publicly funded or on public land, for example, in Marston's Mills, if the town essentially provides the land free of charge to a developer, if there's housing there, then the developer has a benefit of being able to do more affordability because he's not paying for the land.
Right, but
And so forth and so on. So it's different in each transaction.
right,
Yeah.
but would my question be, like if the housing, assistant housing, South Street housing,
Yeah.
West Main Street housing, okay? If they were involved, would it then take it to a different circle?
So the housing authority,
Yes,
Is what you're talking to.
if they build those type of homes, would that make
If-
it, that's what
yeah.
I mean.
the housing authority would have to pay as if because it's a public entity, has to do public construction, which adds a lot to the cost. And there's no, there's a state law that prevents, prevents any more state public housing being built. And there's a federal law that prevents any federal public housing to be built. So that kind of, what we have now is all we're going to get for that unless and until the law changes. Does that help? Thanks.
Can I ask the planning department? I don't know, is somebody working on a inclusionary zoning bylaw?
We have one currently, but
It's 10, the ones, it's 10%, right?
Corey Pacheco, senior planner. Yes, we currently have an inclusionary bylaw, but we're not working on anything new.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to Elizabeth Jenkins about it at times, but, and what's involved in different tiers, and it can get pretty complicated, but we also need an economic analysis at the same time, because I know when they built Hanover 1, 10% was our inclusionary zoning. We asked for 13, and they said yes. I proposed 17, and the town council said no, because we weren't sure whether everybody thought they would walk away if we asked for 17%. But maybe if it was tiered, I'd say I don't know. It's proprietary what they're paying and what it costs them. So I don't know if you have any more thoughts.
Again, I think it's hard to, throw out numbers. Right now, the inclusionary ordinance is 10% for rental housing affordable to 65% of area median
yeah.
income. And for condos, 65% of area median income. And I think for single-family homes, it's 80. It's either 70 or 80, I can't remember. But that's what it is now. There's also supposed to be a commercial payment, but that went by the wayside.
So how does our committee deal with that? Do we make a recommendation to the town council to ask the planning department to do that? Or can we just call him back up and say, Corey, can you do that? What do you think?
I think we make a recommendation that the
Look into it.
inclusionary ordinance be updated based on an economic feasibility analysis. That would be,
Right?
yeah,
And then it could go right to the town council.
and then it could,
Yeah, thank you.
That itself could be a strategy.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that sounds promising, and I'd like to look more into that. But we're talking about, say, for Marston's Mills, just because it's up there, it's a public piece of land. What does the town expect to get back from that land? Does it expect to sell that to a developer, or does this expect to have a 100-year lease on the property for a low value? And if that's the case, can we have a larger percentage required of affordable housing for those projects?
Let me just add one thing. One thing that was talked about at the meeting that you were at was part of the land might be sold to a developer. The rest would go for other purposes. So it would just be a section, so it would just be selling a piece of it to a developer in theory. And so the question is, do they get zero for it and require more affordability, or do they get X, Y, or Z for it and get less affordability? And then is there money in town to provide additional subsidies to get to have greater affordability or not?
Wouldn't the land be the subsidy?
Well, it'd be
Or
part of it.
part of the cost of the land be the subsidy?
You might want more units to be subsidized than the free land could provide. You know, and it's just a negotiation, it's what you want, whatever it is the town wants. I mean, we're obviously in a desperate situation now because we have two things happening. We have a lot of pressure on building non-affordable housing here now with developers and real estate people and so forth who want to do that. And then we have people like us that are worried about creating housing for people who are either poor or working lower paid jobs or paying medium paid jobs, firemen and nurses and all that kind of stuff. We've got pressure all over the place on this.
Well, I think the point is that we're actually going down in our efforts to get to 10%. We're actually going down from 7 point something to 6.78 or something. So we're going in the wrong directions with these
Right.
large developments, and the numerator stays the same, the denominator goes
Right.
wacky, and we never
Yeah.
get to 10%. I think that should be our goal if we're going to do that.
Well, a lot of people said originally the 40B was random, the 10% was random, but of course, and it was, I guess, but over time, there's more and more need for a higher level of affordability because housing's gone up much faster than wages historically forever.
Can I just clarify that the subsidized housing inventory went down because the denominator changes only every 10 years? So the affordables in the numerator keep increasing as affordables come on, but the denominator stays the same. Then 10 years later, it bumps up in the, but again,
One other thing, I don't know if we're done with that, but one other thing I want to discuss is enforcement of current affordable housing over the years, enforcement that remains those units. I understand we don't do that, and I've heard anecdotally, maybe Laura can help me out and there's other people, that those rents start going back towards market level, and they're not, and we're losing some of those units when they're under a contract to remain affordable for many years. So that's also something I think we should suggest and address that we actually enforce that.
A couple of us were talking about that. I don't know if this is against the law. As we were waiting to get the meeting started, we were talking about that very subject, that it happens both it regretfully happens in home ownership too, where they ignore the restrictions and sell it for a market rate, and I don't know what to do about that after the fact. But and then you have with the rentals, and it's been going on for a long time, and part of the issue, well, Laura was saying, I think it was when you said the county is going to create a position that does some of that. But I think the town ought to have a full-time person, a housing person, that does both ends of this. So some of the stuff that we're talking about and also enforces. And then I was told by Jim Kupfer when I asked him about this, that they had tried to hire somebody a couple of years ago, and they were paying, I think, $80,000, but they couldn't get anybody who was qualified to do it, and so they didn't hire, and then the money went away.
Well, we can still pursue it, maybe at
Yeah.
a higher level, but it seems like that's something that'd be important, because if we're losing, leaking water out of what we have,
Sure.
then that's another reason why we're not reaching our goals.
Yeah, it's absurd, to be going through all this and letting the other stuff fly away.
I will agree with that. It's been a sore spot for me for a while that there's no monitoring of affordable units. Until very recently, there was not any applications to the state to get affordable housing that's being produced on this SHI. And, and there's the subsidized housing inventory itself is not accurate. So those are all things that need to be done. And without having a housing person on staff, that is, it makes it difficult. The county has a housing services office that they've funded for the first 2 years with ARPA money, and they're going through making all the towns on the Cape's subsidized housing inventory accurate, except for Barnstable, which Barnstable's working on it themselves. And they're proposing that for year 3, the towns that opt in would pay for their services to monitor the inventory that there is. So.
One of my questions to myself over the last couple of months has been, if we make a point of something like this, do we then, as a committee, try to pressure it to have it happen? In other words, do we want to do something to help make it happen, as well as suggesting that it should happen and just forget about it? Because it's always a concern to me that you got all this trouble to create this affordable housing, you all this worry about the percentage, and then it isn't enforced. And we know perfectly well, we could name, Laura and I and others can name landlords that are doing that deliberately. They know they're doing it. And they do it intentionally when they start the property. They do it right off the bat. And it's not right.
Put it on the list.
Yeah.
You should be doing it.
I think this absolutely ought to be part of our strategies, is what I would call the administration of the housing, and looking at the various options, whether we leverage assets from the county, if that makes sense, that we contribute some funds to that, or administrate from within. But I do know we haven't had a housing coordinator, over 2 years? And it's very hurtful. So maybe it's something we have to delve into. What's going on? We have a lot of staff missing in the town. What can we do? I mean, if this is the problem that it is, and it is probably our number one problem, then we need to address the administration of the problem, because we can do all the programs in the world, but if it's not going to be administered, and Laura, you brought up, just a slight change might help in the enforcement capabilities. So I would think a piece like that would absolutely be among the strategies that we look at.
And once it's a part of it, we can kind of fight it. I think it should. It doesn't make sense, so it'll go on the list.
But we obviously, in many cases, would be pushing influential people.
Wait a minute. So we're pushing what? The people who cares? No, seriously,
Well, some of the
How
people
can
that
we
we're
sit
talking
and
about
not?
have money in
I
it.
know, I know he's teasing, but I mean, the reality of it really is,
Well, I'm
that's
just
really what
saying,
it is.
yeah.
If it's maybe in a different way, but I'll go against King Kong. I don't care.
The rich people always play by the rules.
But it will go on the list, though. We all agree to that.
I agree.
That should be one of our things on the list that we should work on. I think we are all in consensus of that.
People like that one, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, Marianne, I don't think we should be afraid of anybody. I don't care what developer or whatever person in town has influence. First thing, they got to play by the rules like everybody else. I know that's not always happening, and I know, for example, a number of examples where I live, and it drives me up a tree. And I think the council runs the town. We put our big boy pants on and force the issue. Okay, yeah.
Well, it would be nice to have the work of this committee result in something being done. That would be nice.
Yes.
We're getting to the end of our agenda, and we've got a little bit of time left over, but we're supposed to approve the minutes of the last meeting. I bet nobody's read them. But I'm speaking to myself. Well, we can.
We only got them
Paul,
today.
do you,
Thank you very much for recognizing me again, Mr. Chairman. I just want to reiterate just a piece of this puzzle I brought up previous, that I know of 4 or 5 seniors in my precinct that are house poor, and they'd love to go out, but there's no place for them to go. If I would like to see senior housing put on this list that Councilor Starr brilliantly brought up, if we can have something to work off of. The folks I did speak with, they have no place to go, so they're in their homes, and a lot of them are by themselves. It's lonely. It's very sad. If we can create some housing, and I talked to Mr. Kupner previous, see if there's any programs, if we could build housing and promise seniors some place to go from the town, maybe we could mark that as either affordable or first-time buyers, whatever we choose. That's just a thought to open up some housing. I'd love to see.
Yeah.
I do want to. I'll close by saying I appreciate all these councils' work. Imagine, by the way, incidentally, the tax proposal over $1 million. If anyone reads the Boston Globe anymore, my former employer, little plug there, we saw in the paper there's a $20 million mansion for sale down in the harbor. So that would bring in, how much would that bring in? Right then. I do want to thank everyone, because I don't understand the rock throwing and the anger when this committee was first formed. My goodness, everybody here, I've learned so much every time I've watched a meeting, get a little bit more educated. And if you would look at who was standing at this podium before, real estate lawyers, real estate agents lit the fire. And I don't understand why anyone doesn't want to help the situation we're in right now. And I thank you all for spending your time here today. Bye.
One thing I will say to you, Paul, is as a former developer, nonprofit developer, it was easy to do elderly housing because people accepted that. Just as it's, but when it comes to family housing, they don't accept it. So it is easy to do. And we did several of them, but well, actually, probably 7 or 8 of them. But so it's a good idea. Then you wonder what happens to the housing that those seniors move out of. And is there a way to capture those houses by subsidizing? If you're going to build a house, you're going to subsidize it, right? So why can't you subsidize a house and buying from the seniors that move into this housing, the difference between what they could get and what an affordable house would be? And if it could be affordable for 100% of whatever it is, and maybe it's a $550 there's a lot of ranches on Cape Cod, 2 and 3 bedroom ranches. People think they're all capes or they're all fancy, but they're not. And you might be able to buy those for, $550 or something and sell them for $250, and you'd have to subsidize for $200, which would be cheaper than building it. And so, it's just a thought.
Thank you.
You know, I know we're ready to wrap up, and I just want to make a point that, and I know whatever, I think people need to understand out there, the places that we're trying to build, the things that we're trying to do, is that all low-income people aren't, people have a concept in their heads, and I think this is a lot of the problem too. They have a concept that all poor people or low-income people are going to come in and bring their crime and bring their whatever. Then you have the group of people that, oh, they're people of color, they're bringing their crime. When the fact of the matter is, none of it's true. Poor people don't like crime. People of color don't like crime. If there's a criminal and he's climbing in my window, I'm knocking him out, and I want him under the jail. And I don't care what race, what income, and I think people need to understand that. And I think when they're making decisions on who they want in their neighborhood, that's their first thought. Oh, they're poor people, we know what that means. Or they're people of color, we know what that means. No, you don't. Because poor people and people of color love their children, raise their children, care about their children, don't want what they've earned taken away. They like nice things. So I think when we get rid of all of that, because if someone's breaking the law, then you do what you would do anywhere else. You call the police, we want them out of here. We all agree with that. I don't want a criminal, a proven criminal, not someone that I think is a criminal because of the way they look or because their car muffler fell off and they can't fix it right away. But a proven criminal, then I want them gone. But short of that, I just can't assume. And I think that's something that we all should try very hard to make that part of the conversation when you're trying to get people to understand what we're doing and how important it is, and make them not afraid to talk about it. If you have a lot of people out there who have that fear, well, talk about it. Bring it up so people can make you understand. So you can understand that nobody wants a criminal no more than you do. But people are afraid to talk about certain things. So it's our job, bring it up. Bring it up, talk to them, make them understand. That's going to open some doors. It really is. And I'm going to not bother anybody for the rest of the evening. Thank you.
So we have to schedule our next meeting. Is that a possible? Oh, we got to do the minutes, yeah. But Laura was just ready to jump up, so is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Well, we should agree to it right now while we've got almost, got everybody here. Can you tell us when the next available one is? Are we doing Mondays? Do we want to do 2 Mondays from now?
That's the holiday.
Is that the holiday?
Yep.
Probably don't want to do it, huh?
Nope, the one after that. I'm on vacation.
11th.
Yep.
So it's the 10th?
18 is not a holiday. It is the following week is Thanksgiving, which is the 29th.
Yeah.
Or the 28th.
The 18th, I'm
What?
on vacation. But that's, you guys will meet, obviously.
Okay, so what's a better date?
18th or the 11th.
11th is a holiday.
Can't meet on the 11th, the town's closed.
Okay. 18th.
Yep.
Yes, that following week is all Thanksgiving.
What?
18th, the following week is that crazy week, Thanksgiving week.
Well, but if Laura's not here, I'd rather have Laura here. Anyone meet on, I could meet the Monday of Thanksgiving week.
Well, 25th?
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
too.
I can. I'll be tanned.
What? You'll be where? Oh, you'll be 10th. So we're going to do it the 25th?
25th, okay.
Is that it? Yeah,
And if I can just add one thing, we're starting to gel, I think, on some of our recommendations, but I don't understand who's going to do these, work them up. I mean, a lot of subcommittees have assistants from the staff. We don't have that. Who's writing these up in a professional way that we have the understanding? Who's going to volunteer to do that, Rick?
Well, do we use the legal department to help with stuff like that?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. You mean,
Do you?
Corey Pacheco, senior planner, I could help you out with that.
Okay, thanks.
So
That's your job.
I do have notes here that I can put into kind of bullet point options for you guys and send it along to Cynthia and share it with you guys, and we work from there.
Well, maybe we can make some progress on the 25th. Well, people should go through the town plan for the 25th and look at all the 30 or so things that are in there, because there's some good stuff in there. We reviewed them before, but we got to begin getting to our answers here. And today we have made some progress, actually.
So the list of options that I have so far is a residential exemption, town-owned properties for affordable housing, transfer tax, short-term rental restrictions, increase in the percentage of inclusionary affordable housing and developments, and hire staff to prioritize monitoring and administer enforcement. That's kind of what I've gotten from your discussion.
That
Yes.
was what we talked about today. Yeah.
Okay. I'll put it into some sort of legible form.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Corey Pacheco.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Corey.
Corey.
I just, the meeting's over, I just want, one thing I wanted to say in response to what you said, and I just give me 2 minutes and I'll do this. When I first moved to the Cape 50 years ago, the state had about 100 state 707 rental assistance units, which I created the nonprofit HACK to take over. And so I visited virtually all of those 100 families, people, in units all over the Cape, on the isle, on Martha's Vineyard, and all, as far as Provincetown. And so I did it because I wanted to know who they all were. And what I did is I sat in people's living rooms and had coffee or tea or something, and I saw people struggling to make their lives work just like the rest of us. And now, in my tremendous amount of experience after that, I did come across some bum guys that caused problems here and there. Not very many, but there were some. But the people are people who, for one reason or another, in their growing up, didn't get the kind of support that I had gotten from their parents, didn't get the kind of opportunities I got from my parents, didn't get the kind of values that I got from my parents. And they were trying to struggle to make their lives work without having that background that I was lucky to have. And I've been, ever since then, I've been just so totally sympathetic and committed to helping people in that situation. Not that the things haven't changed in 50 years, I wouldn't argue that. You know, there are some difficult people, the drugs have come into play that weren't so much in play then and so forth, but there's a lot of people out there suffering that are very needy and deserving and doing the best they can that we're trying to help.
I love that, because I think if people come to realize that every doctor, every lawyer, I don't care what category, every police is no rotten person. Every attorney, but do you have some? Yes. You don't go all the way. You know, and that's the whole concept. You just don't, when it comes to people who are low income and people of color, the worst of us end up representing all of us in the eyes of the world out there, and that is the sad part. And in reality, we don't let that happen in any other situation. No other situation. You don't let a raggedy attorney represent every attorney out there. You know, and I think that's what has to change in this society. Well, and I can't worry about the rest, but I can worry about the Cape. You know, I can worry about the Cape. And, you know, it's not fair. It makes it hard for us, you know, but I like this committee. I think the people on this committee really are here because they really want to see things better. And that's an awesome thing. Not that we're gonna make it happen, but we're gonna put our best foot forward to make it happen, you know.
Well, on that great note, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.